What would you say you do here?
It's the Signal Chords, home of the Underground podcast. A podcast dedicated to up-and-coming bands, labels, artists, and more. Plug in and join your host, Brad Nunnery, as he dives deep into what the future of music has to hold and discover something new along the way. What else do you have to do?
Hi, this is Rick from Tears of a Fallen Hero. You're listening to Signal Chords, the home of the Underground podcast.
I've been crawling, I've been crying, I'm trying to scream in the silence. So now it's the right time, once in a lifetime, I'm trying to scream in the silence. Afraid no one will never know, the time is now, lose control. I fade away, the world will never know.
Man, I love that song. Scream in the Silence, it's Tears of a Fallen Hero. Much love to Rick Anderson from the band for cutting that promo for us. They've got a debut record out. It's called Save Us From Ourselves. It's amazing if you're a fan of alternative rock with a hint of pop punk. Definitely check it out from our Swedish friends. Really, really killer stuff. Find them everywhere on social media at Tears of a Fallen Hero. All right, welcome to Signal Chords, home of the Underground podcast, episode 4. My name is Brad Nunnery. Thank you so much for joining us. Set to talk to us today is Wes Hoffman from Wes Hoffman and Friends. St. Louis pop punk, really killer band, really killer dude. I can't wait to talk to Wes. We've known each other for the past couple of years. Got a lot to talk about. They've got a new album in the works, as well as his own podcast that he just recently started. So we're going to talk to him about that. We're going to talk about life on the road, shows that they've been doing, all that good stuff. So stick around, hang out. It's Signal Chords, home of the Underground podcast.
I'm getting stronger, couldn't take it any longer. Try not to think about the days gone by, and the times that I don't know what I'm here for. You give me something to live for.
Wes Hoffman, what's up, buddy? What's up, man?
Not
So
much.
glad
How
to
are
see
you?
you, dude.
It's good to see you
Man,
too,
I'm
man.
awesome, dude. Yeah. It's been it's been a couple of years now that you and I have been kind of going back and forth and working with each other on some of your singles, some of your music videos, and that really cool documentary that you did, kind of introducing the band and all that kind of stuff. I know you're super busy lately. We've got a lot to talk about. Got the new podcast going. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about St. Louis and the 314 Punk that you've started. We're going to talk about the new album, how you signed up with Jumpstart Records and Wrecking Crew. And I want to talk to you about all that kind of stuff. So hopefully we can get everything in the next hour or so. But I just wanted to kind of figure out how's everything going so far? What's going on with the band right now as it stands now?
Yeah, man. I mean, everything's going really good. As of right now, we're kind of in a little bit of a break for the summer. I don't. I think this year already we've done like 5 out of town weekenders. So we've done a bunch of shows already, and I kind of wanted to take a little bit of a break for the summer because there's a lot of things happening in the summer. People are on vacations, and kids are home from school, and all that kind of stuff. So it's kind of like in my mind, it's kind of a tough time to do shows because there's just a lot of other things happening. Like the summer and the holidays are like 2 times that like I kind of take a little bit of a break from shows just because there's a lot of stuff happening. But we are getting ready to. I'm doing a lot of writing. I always write. I'm always writing about 5 days a week in my studio. So I have tons and tons of songs. Like I pretty much have our second album already written.
Do you really?
Yeah.
Not the one that's coming out coming out soon, right? It's the what's the name of the new album that's coming out?
The new album is going to be called How It Should Be.
Okay, cool. So, but you've got stuff after that album there?
Oh yeah, absolutely, man. I know I have at least 12 or 13 songs completely done, completely demoed out. Like we haven't been to the studio to record them yet, but I have them written, and a lot of them will probably not make it because like as just like the cycle goes, like you keep recording you keep writing, you keep recording, and then you keep writing better and better stuff. So, a lot of times the stuff that I've written, some of these songs that I've written past the new album are probably getting close to a year old now. So stuff
Wow.
that I've written that I'm writing now is better than that. So, that's kind of other bands that I've talked to that, when I used to talk to other bands on previous podcasts that I would host and stuff, they would say, "Oh yeah, by the time our new album comes out, we already have another one written." And I would just be like, "Wow, that makes no sense to me." But
Right.
now I kind of see, oh, well, it takes if you want to put out an album and it's going to be through a label and you're going to put it on vinyl and everything like that, it's a very long process,
Sure.
especially for us, like I wrote and recorded everything for this album and then got it mixed and mastered and then started like reaching out to labels to talk to them about it. So yeah, it takes a long
Yeah,
time.
how is it I mean, it's, I guess it's better to have a whole bunch of songs in your arsenal, right? So like it takes the pressure off you to come up with something after an album cycle, after a tour cycle from that album, right? So you're like, you already have new, songs already written. Like you said, things take time to put the vinyls together and all that kind of stuff. So it's the smart move, and it's awesome. But what if you come up with a better idea, and like, how do you pick and choose what's going to go on this new record, and then what you're going to save, or do you just have it and you just say, okay, there's no changing. You can't take the stuff that you've written in the future and put it on this new record, or how do you make those decisions? You know what I mean?
Yeah, man. I mean, I'm still kind of in the process of making those decisions. So,
Yeah, are you? Yeah.
yeah. I mean, even when we put out our EP, Rewrite the Story, our bass player Jacob, who's been my best friend for 22 years, literally to the day yesterday was our 22-year like friend anniversary, and he and I usually sit in a room and like listen through all the songs and kind of like, okay, which ones do we think are the best? And even on our EP, I had written some songs that are going to be on the new album. That he was like, oh, dude, we should totally try to like put this on the EP. And I'm like, no, we've already got everything. Like, we're not
Right.
recording again until it would just delay the release of it. So, it's tough, and I think sometimes you do have to just say, okay, this one is done. And even though these songs are really so Where Summer Never Ends and A Second Too Soon, which are already out on streaming platforms, those are two songs that are going to be on the new album. So
Oh, okay.
yeah, so that kind of gives
Yeah,
you an
I was
idea.
gonna ask you if you were gonna include any of the at least when the sum never ends, but like any of those songs that from the EP, or was this going to be all brand new songs? What we can expect from the new record. So that was one of my questions. You already answered it.
Yeah, so the EP is already no, all those songs like are just standalone. They'll be on the EP. None of those will be
Sure.
making any appearances on like the album or anything. But the two singles that are out, the new ones, like those will definitely be on there.
Okay.
And yeah, man, it's hard because you're like, especially these songs. Some of these songs are old to me, but a lot of people are just, even now, people are still just discovering our music as we're touring and we're going out and we're
Sure.
doing new songs. People are still listening to Where Summer Never Ends, or they're hearing A Second Too Soon for the first time. And um, so even though they're old to us, they're new. They're going to be new to other people. And even though when the album comes out, we're gonna be like, oh man, some of these songs are like 2 years old. They're gonna be new to everybody else. And
Sure.
we even have somebody that's gonna be filling in on guitar for us on a few shows. And I sent him the masters to the new album, and he was like, holy shit, man, these are really good. So it's still good
That's
stuff.
awesome.
It's just that thing where it's not new to us yet still. So it feels a
Sure.
little weird. And but yeah, I mean, I think I'm always just trying to write the best song that I can. And sometimes it's, if you listen, I know you've heard all, like probably all of our songs. Like some
Yeah.
of them are fast skate punk style songs. They have elements of like
Hmm.
skate punk, and some of
Yep.
them are more like slower kind of emo songs, and like
Hmm.
really kind of mixing in but the best of both worlds. Is really what I'm trying to do. So it's hard when you only have 5 songs, or like, people have told me before, they're like, oh, well, dude, when you put out your first couple singles, I didn't listen to those. I waited until you put out a whole EP because I wanted to hear like a cohesive thing.
Right. Like, yeah. As a whole. Right. Yeah. Like some of my favorite bands, like I won't do that. Like they'll release a single and I'm like, no, I can't. Like I'll revisit it if I know the album's coming sometime soon. Like I won't even listen to the single because I want to, like you said, listen to it as a whole, right? And have that experience of, because we come from those days of the CDs and the albums and the tapes and the records and all that kind of stuff. And it's like I think that's embedded in our brains, to enjoy the whole record, and we're not, like super young and just worry about the next single and worry about the next single.
For sure. Yeah, I'm definitely an album guy. Even just yesterday, I listened to, are you a Wilhelm Scream fan?
Love Wilhelm Scream. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So I actually just had Trevor from a Wilhelm Scream on my podcast yesterday. And
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so I went on a walk with my dog and I listened to the whole, their new album that came out last year, Lose Your Delusion. And, listening to that whole album, it's a Wilhelm Scream album. And all the songs kind of like fit in together. I think when they were releasing singles to that, I kind of heard the response from people, and some people like weren't into it, or it took them a little while to like for some of the songs to grow on them. But if you listen to it as a collective whole, I feel like that's how it's supposed to be listened to.
Yeah, because at least the first couple of singles were like completely different, right? There was that one really catchy, like almost poppy, pop punk kind of stuff. But then there was that speed punk that I love about Wilhelm Scream. That's exactly, like it's like almost like musical Tourette's, the way that a Wilhelm Scream plays. It's just the guitar work and the bass. The bass player of that band is amazing. The guitar, I love that band completely. I've been following them for quite some time now. So.
Yeah. Oh, dude, they're so good. And we actually got to play a show with them in September last year when they came to St. Louis. And they have been one of my favorite bands for a long time, just because they're so technical. And they're kind of like punk rock ADD. Like,
yeah, right. I love it.
Yeah. So,
but it works because like the guitar player and like the band's doing one thing and the singer's doing the other. And I made this. I was talking to somebody else about this the other day about, like, it's so weird. It doesn't feel like they fit, right? Like the band's doing one thing and the singer's doing another, and it doesn't seem like it should like make sense, but it comes together and it totally does. And I love that about a Wilhelm Scream. I don't know if you know what I mean by that,
Oh, absolutely. There's not a single band that I could say that I've ever heard that I've been like, there's some bands that I'm like, oh, this reminds me of Hot Water Music, or there's even parts in our songs that I can be like, okay, Where Summer Never Ends, I was totally like kind of channeling Hot Water Music on some of that stuff. And then on other songs, I'm like, oh, this was kind of more MXPX. There's not a single band that I can say they're ripping off Wilhelm Scream. Like,
right.
I think it's just impossible to do. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. So you had Trevor on from a Wilhelm Scream on your podcast?
Yeah.
Oh sweet. When's that going to air?
It should be. I would say probably next week or the week after.
Okay. All right. I mean, you're burning through a whole bunch of episodes. You're putting me to shame. I'm only on my 4th one. You're on your 12th one. You just started like a week ago. I was looking at yours and I'm like, holy crap, I need to catch up, man. I know you got Steve Rawls from Belvedere already on there. You got Joe and Colby from Stay the Course. And I was just talking to Alex from Bad Planning.
Yes.
Him and I were going back and forth today, and he says, what's up, by the way?
Oh, dude, I love Alex. He's, him and the guys from Stay the Course have been, like, they're those people that you just don't have to ever, it's like when you meet your best friend for the first time. Like I was just talking about our bass player, Jacob. Like when we met, it was like, you didn't have to try to be friends with anybody. It's just like that instant connection and almost this instant kind of like, I feel like I've known you guys before, you know what I mean? And you don't ever feel like you have to hide parts of yourself around those people. And when we first met the guys from Stay the Course, that's totally how it was. I had been just talking to the singer Joe, and when they came to St. Louis and we started like our weekend of shows with them, it was just like with all the other guys, it was immediately like just okay, we're friends. Like, and I wouldn't say we've had negative, and it was the same thing with Bad Planning as well. Like Alex and I had been talking for months leading up to that booking the tour, but like we hadn't met the other guys either, but we just kind of knew going in like this is going to be, these guys are cool and this is going to be really easy. And it's not always like that with other bands, and not to say we haven't had like negative interactions or anything like that, but it's just like sometimes you're on a tour with a band and they just kind of do their own thing and you do your own thing and you're cool with each other, but it's just like, you know, with Stay the Course, it's like, hey, where are you guys going to eat? What are you doing? What time are you getting to the venue? Like, let's hang out. Let's go do whatever, you know. And even on our last, we did like a little 2-day sprint. We stayed together in the same like Airbnbs and stuff like that too. So, you know, and Alex, you know, his dad is super hospitable, and we stayed up at his dad's house, and he stayed with us during that time too. So, yeah, it's really cool. Like, dude, I'm just thankful. Like, I've gotten to meet so many cool people and make so many friends through music, yourself included, man. You know,
Yeah. No, it's awesome because, you know, I love I love working with bands like yours, and you're probably the second or third person to really, you know, you recorded a video for me, and I was really gun shy about, you know, starting this this page and eventually become a podcast. And you're like, yeah, man, I'll shoot you a video and help promote my, you know, my song or whatever. And I just remember going, oh my God, this is so cool. This is like, you know, I need to continue this and figure out, you know, how to make this the best. You know, and meeting these bands and all that kind of stuff. You know, there are some bands that are out there that they're just looking to push their single and not look to do anything else or whatever. But 9 times out of 10, everybody's so cool, and I love it. And it keeps me motivated to keep this this podcast or this page going. You know, I mean, it was a page for a couple of years, and I just now started a podcast. And
yeah,
you know, people are coming out of the woodworks now, and I'm meeting so many cool people. You know, like I met Alex today, and we were going back and forth and talking about you and talking about, you know, the podcast he did with you and all that stuff. But it's so cool. But you know, with this podcast, what made you wanted to start it? And, you know, what are you talking about on this podcast? I know you're interviewing bands and your friends and all that kind of stuff, but what's kind of, you know, your theme for this podcast? And what's it called again?
For What It's Worth with Wes Hoffman.
Sweet. Oh, I love it. From Rewrite the Story, the single
Yeah.
from there? Okay.
Yeah. So first of all, I want to say, and I was just on a podcast called the ATI podcast the other night, and I say this every time that I'm on a podcast, like what you're doing, promoting bands and doing a podcast, and, you know, sharing their music videos and stuff on Instagram and Twitter and all that, and what the bands are doing. It's like, sometimes I think there's the idea of like, oh, you know, the bands are better than the people that are trying to promote it or something like that. Or like, you know, and it's all, for me, I look at it as all as like, having been a person who does a podcast and who has promoted other bands, and also being a touring musician and being a podcaster, it's all equal. It's like we all have to work with each other, and it's not like one is better than the other. You know what I mean? Like, and there's people that do similar things to what you do. Like, I'm sure you work with some publicists, or some publicists send you people like, hey, could you promote this? So you know, there's probably independent publicists out there that you work with. I've worked with them on podcasts in the past, and those people get paid a lot of money just to have the connections to say, hey, I can get this on Punk News, or I can get this on New Noise, or Alternative Press, or Brooklyn Vegan, or whatever, you know. So it's all like, it all works hand in hand. You know what I mean? It's all part of the music business. It's all part of the bigger picture. So I really appreciate what you're doing, you know, for my band, but as well as other bands, because that's how we get the word out. You know what I mean? Like,
absolutely.
And that's essentially what you want to do. If you're in a band and if you feel silly about telling people to listen to your band, then I feel like, for me, that was a confidence issue. I didn't think my music was good enough to go up to somebody and be like, hey, I'd love for you to listen to my band. Now, I've gotten over that, and I feel like my confidence is, my confidence level is these songs are good, and I
Mhm.
really like them. So
Mhm.
why would I be afraid to share them with other people? So
Yeah.
I'm always looking for like the biggest opportunity the biggest or the smallest, uh, opportunity to put something out. So, yeah. Okay. You asked me about the podcast.
Yeah, 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 yeah. No, I was just saying, as far as like, the bands, you've already had a whole bunch of people, and you've got, I'm sure, a whole bunch of other people lined up already. And they can find it everywhere, right? On iTunes and Spotify and all that kind of stuff. Is it strictly just a streaming platform? Are you on YouTube as well? Is it a video thing, or is it just strictly audio?
I haven't put it on YouTube yet. So yeah, I can kind of go back a little bit and talk about podcasting. So I have been podcasting off and on for almost 10 years. Since
Oh wow.
2014 was when I first started. I had a podcast called The Strange House, and it was with a friend of mine who owned a donut shop here called Strange Donuts, which would be kind of equivalent to like Voodoo Donuts out on the West Coast
Sure.
or something like that. And we started out talking to different entrepreneurs and people in St. Louis, uh, because we were both entrepreneurs and self-employed, and then that kind of morphed into I thought, hey, Mike Herrera from MXPX has a podcast, and we have a podcast, and MXPX is one of my favorite bands. I want, and he and I've been friends on Facebook for, I mean, 20 years. So I was like, and maybe we've interacted just very minimally, but I was like,
Sure.
what if I just sent him a message and asked if he wanted to be on the pod? And so
Yeah.
he said yes, and this was back in 2015. So he said yes, and he was on our podcast, and then we ended up bringing him to St. Louis to be a keynote speaker for like a social media workshop that we put on.
Oh
So we
wow, really?
Yeah, yeah. So we got to know him, and we were on his podcast, and I was actually recently just on his podcast a few weeks ago. And
Yeah, I
so
saw that. That was awesome.
yeah, yeah, super cool. So so uh when he was kind of the first person that we had on, and then we were like, okay, well, maybe we should reach out to some of these other bands that are coming through St. Louis and ask them if they want to be on podcast with us. And um, podcasting was still kind of like not how it is now, where everyone has a podcast and it's really easy to do.
Yeah.
It was still kind of difficult for there were parts of it that were difficult for us to figure out, and um, it was still really hard for people to kind of figure out how to do it.
Yeah.
Now
Yeah.
now it's just become so easy, like, you know, and but anyway, I'm getting off track, but um, we we during that time, like over the next couple of years, we went on Warp Tour for 5 days. We talked to tons of bands. We've talked to like Neck Deep, Strung Out, um, or not Strung Out, Neck Deep, State Champs, Knuckle Puck, Real Friends, MXPX, Bayside, Hawthorne Heights a bunch of times, a couple guys,
Amazing.
Story of the Year, a couple guys from Every Time I Die, 4 Year Strong. I mean, the list goes on and on. We were just talking to every single band, it seemed like. And, I've really loved podcasting. I've always kind of loved the art of conversation and
Sure.
going deeper with people about like, hey, how did this, everybody that's in a band is just a normal dude. You know what I mean?
Right. Right. Yeah.
Even Billy Joe Armstrong from Green Day, even though they're a huge band, like he is a normal dude and has normal problems just like everybody else. And for me, I'm always kind of like, what has motivated you to keep doing this? But also, like, for a band like that, like, you know, I just saw a video the other day of Green Day playing at like a high school patio, in California somewhere in 1990.
Recently? Oh no, this is back in the
1994.
'90s.
Yeah, yeah, where
Oh yeah.
they're literally kids. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
how do you feel? My question is always to some of these bands is like, looking back on that show and playing that show, and now playing like arenas. How does that feel? Like, the
Yeah.
dichotomy between those two things.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
starting out like how we all did, playing garages and high schools, like to now, that journey. I mean, of course, there's like 30 years of that. I know it's hard to
Yeah.
reflect the last 30 years, but like, at what point did you kind of realize, oh wow, this is really getting crazy? Like, um, so I made a lot of connections through podcasting with people in the music industry, bands, publicists, promoters, people who put on festivals, stuff like that. So, you know, with this new in between that, I was doing the 314 Punk podcast where I was focusing mainly on musicians in St. Louis, and that has kind of like I'm still doing that. I'm still promoting some of the shows and stuff on Instagram, but I've dropped the podcast for that. But I still wanted to do more, and I kind of felt like, man, I'm meeting all these cool people on the road. I'm playing shows with bands like Belvedere and a Wilhelm Scream and Fear, and how can we, and then there's other bands like Bad Planning and You Vandal and bands that are like now our label mates, and Tired Radio, and bands that we're going on tour with. I'm like, how can I kind of promote these people and build connections with them, or also use it as a way to, hey, I'd like to get to know you. You want to be on my podcast? Like I'm happy to like spend 45 minutes talking to you and kind of going there and seeing where this relationship goes. So yeah, I don't know. Does that answer the question?
No, I mean, no, it's funny because everything that you're saying, I mean, I totally agree. And that's totally what I'm trying to do here, and it's funny because I'm still learning the chops. You've been doing podcasting for a while. I've just started. I'm taking the baby steps where I'm just going to, I'm trying to grow the YouTube page, and then eventually I'll get on a major streaming, but I'm learning how to edit video. I'm learning everything on the fly here.
Yeah.
So it's like baby steps, right? And talking to people and getting the audio right. And every podcast I've already done, the 3 that I've done, I've always had some kind of issue where I didn't have my Rode mic, like I was just the computer audio and I didn't realize it, and just all these mistakes that I'm making, I'm going through like this season, but it's really cool, and it takes me a little bit longer, and I have a lot of bands wanting to be on, and it's honoring, right? Because like, who am
Sure.
I? I'm just a promoter, right? But all these bands are coming to me, and I'm like, I'm overwhelmed, right? To where I'm like, okay, and I have to say, listen, I'm already booked through September because I can only do like one like a month, just because I got 3 kids, I got a family, I got a full-time job.
Sure.
I'm trying to juggle everything, but it's so awesome. And just like time management, and I don't know how you do it, with time management, but I try my best, and sometimes I just get overwhelmed. How do you split your time, and what are your kind of rules about concentrating on one thing, like on music, or concentrating on the podcast, or getting the tour ready, or all that kind of stuff? How do you manage all that time?
Yeah. I mean, that's a great question. Jacob, our bass player, asked me this the other day too. He was like, how do you like get all this stuff done? And because the last couple tours, I've booked most of the shows, and I find a lot of the locals and stuff like that, and a lot of it is like, I find time like kind of in the cracks, you know what I mean? Because it doesn't take very long to send an email to a venue. Like,
Sure.
it doesn't take, sometimes researching, hey, Jacksonville, Florida, I've never been there before. So like, what are the venues? What are the bands from there? Like, so maybe it takes a little bit of time to kind of figure that out. But, then you send emails, and then after a few days, if they don't follow up, you send another email, you send a Facebook message. Like, those things don't take very long. I kind of work them into like my lifestyle a little bit. And I always have my phone on me, so like it's always easy to get messages. With music though, and writing songs, I'm pretty big on like I said earlier, I'm down at the studio 5 days a week, if not 6, sometimes 7. And usually it depends on what me and my girlfriend have going on, and it like so. But usually like Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, at some point Saturday and Sunday, I'm there. You know what I mean? And
Sure.
I'll sometimes it varies a little bit. It'll be like, oh, we're doing something in the evening, so I'm gonna go down there at 10 in the morning on Sunday, and I'll be there till noon or 1, and then I'll come home. And I also have a job that now in the summer we only work until noons on Fridays. So like Yeah, so I've been doing the
Oh,
podcast.
that's awesome.
Yeah, yeah. So I've been doing the podcast. I mean, sometimes it's a little bit later than that if I have stuff going on that needs to be done. But I've been scheduling the podcasts at Friday, like in the afternoons, because I'm done with work a little bit early. So that really helps. I'm really big on like somebody told me one time that like busy people make time, and that's why they're busy, is because you make time for the things that you want to do. And I don't really feel like working on music or booking a tour or doing the podcast. It doesn't feel like work. I enjoy doing it. So it's like,
Yeah.
so I look
Yeah.
forward to the times of doing it. You know that I'm going to be able to sit down and do this kind of stuff. So
Yeah, I mean that's how I feel about Signal Chords. You know, it's kind of my outlet. You know what I mean? It's my, I guess, hobby or whatnot. It's my way to give back, and it is a lot of work putting these things together, as you know. You know, and still promoting bands every day and talking to bands every day and all that kind of stuff. It's a lot of work, but you know what? I love every single minute of it. And you know, that's, if you do what you love, you never have to work a day in your life. You know what I mean? So
absolutely.
that's awesome. But yeah, you're talking about tours, and I want to talk about you just did some shows up in Canada, because I'm really interested in finding out how, if it's different up there, you know, as far as, I don't know, like venues or rules, restrictions, all that kind of stuff. And how did the show up in Quebec go? And how was Quebec, by the way?
Yeah. Oh, dude. It was awesome, and I want to give a big shout out to John at Wrecking Crew Records for getting us up there, and you know he booked both of the shows, and it was really cool. I mean, everybody speaks French, so
Yeah.
so it definitely, you know, we were in a different country, and it definitely felt like at times that we were in like a European country, especially in Quebec City or something like that, because you know everything's in French, and you know sometimes the menus at restaurants and stuff were in English, but everybody starts out thinking that you're going to speak French. So um, you know we got used to saying
That's
bonjour and
right,
merci
right.
like pretty
Yeah.
quickly. Um, but but the shows were cool. I mean, honestly, it was pretty much the same to like the United States when it comes to like shows and stuff like that. The venue that we played at was La Source in Quebec City, and it was a super cool venue. Reminded me of one of the venues here in St. Louis. And then we played at the Underground in Rimouski, and that was a really cool venue. It was like in imagine like the main street in your hometown that kind of looks old school, you know, Main Street.
Hmm.
And then
Yeah.
like there was just like a door that you walked through a hallway, and then you walked down some steps and turned a corner, and like there was this big open room where there's a music venue, and so it
That's
was
awesome.
really cool. Yeah, it was awesome.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean the culture and everything was really cool. Like uh we ran into a little bit of competition at like our Quebec City show. There was a music festival happening, and like that took some of the people away from us. But we got to sing our song with Emily Plamondon. Our
Did you?
yeah.
Oh, dude, I love that's like one of my favorite songs, and she killed it on that
Oh,
song,
she
man.
absolutely killed it. Yeah, and so
Yeah.
that was a very
Yeah.
special moment. We got to hang out with her for like she showed us all around Quebec City, and um uh we got to sing the song with her on stage, and so that was really kind of a surreal moment for me. I almost teared up a little bit on stage, just like because it
Sure.
was one of those like, how did we get here? Like I never
Yeah.
thought when we asked her to sing the song, I never thought. I thought, well, it'll be years before we ever make it to Canada and we're able to sing this song, and you know it would be more likely that she would maybe be at some festival in the United States, like like the Fest or something like that, or
Sure.
you know, Riot Fest or something. It would be more likely that we would run into her in the States than us going to Canada. And
Right.
I even remember when Jay from Wrecking Crew, like when we started talking to him, I remember thinking, dude, there's no way we're going to ever make it up to Canada. Like it's going to be probably 5 or 6 years before we ever get to a point where we're going to get up there. But
So
yeah,
that was your first time up in Canada?
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, and we want to come back at some point. I think, you know, with The shows were good. There were definitely people at the shows. Like they were a little bit smaller than what I would have. I'm always gonna wish that there was 1,000 people at every show. You know what I mean? Like that's just
Sure.
how I am. But um, I think next time we'll probably try to find a band, in that is fairly well known. I would love to go on tour with Downstater. Um,
Oh,
you know,
dude, let's talk about that band for a second.
because
Oh man, you and
those
I
guys
went back and forth about that band not too long ago. That
yeah,
would be amazing.
yeah. Oh, dude, I would love to go on tour with them, and I've been talking to them about being on my podcast, and um, I was hoping that I invited them to come out to my show. They weren't able to make it, but like, I invited them to come out to our show in Quebec City, and I would really love to do something with them. Even if it was just like Montreal, Quebec City, and Rimouski. That would be such a sick weekender.
Oh
But
yeah,
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 we had a lot of fun, man. It was a lot of fun, and anytime that you tour, anytime that you do shows, that for me anyway, like we've had experiences. We haven't had a lot of these lately, but we've had experiences where we've went somewhere and it hasn't been a good turnout, and um, then I start thinking, okay, this isn't what I wanted. How can I make this better next time? And for whatever reason, there's been times where maybe the promoter didn't get locals on the show until like the week of the show, or
yeah,
the venue like didn't promote it, or we didn't have all our ducks in a row. We didn't have Facebook events up, we didn't have a flyer. So with all that, I'm kind of like, how can I make sure that next time this is going to be better? And now I do all those things. I'll research locals in Chicago. Well, now Chicago, we have Bad Planning, and we have a couple
yeah.
other bands that we're good friends with up there that are always willing to play with us, and then in like someplace like Cleveland where I've never been, like I'll get recommendations from the venue and I'll reach out to those locals. And I always try to kind of find somebody that's maybe played there before and say, hey, what band did you play with? How was your show? Like, who do you guys recommend we play with? So trying to kind of figure that out along the way, because you're essentially you're doing something that you've never done before. I've never played a
Yeah.
show in Philadelphia. I've never played a show in Jacksonville. So I'm going to rely heavily on the bands there, or a band like You Vandal that we're going to tour with, to be like, hey, who do you guys know in Jacksonville? Who do you guys know in Orlando?
Yeah.
And try to make it the best show that we can. Because if you're going to go all that way and you're going to buy tickets and fly, or you're going to drive all that way, you want to make it worth your while. I
Yeah,
mean,
right. Yeah, yeah,
I'll
absolutely.
still do it if there's 5 people at the show, but I would be much happier if there's like 100 people at the show, and I'll do everything I
Right.
can to kind of make that second part of that happen.
Yeah, I mean, if you put all the work in and you've done everything that you can, and then you make the trip all the way out there, and let's say, 40 people make it to the show, at least you know that you've done everything that you could. You know what I mean? So if you slack off and you don't do the things you do, and you're you know what you're kind of getting into, and then, all that kind of stuff. But you were talking about Jacksonville and Orlando, and you and I kind of went back and forth. What's the progress on you said about January, February time that you might make it down to Florida?
Yeah. So we have, it's in January. It's pretty cold here in St. Louis. There's likely there could be snow on the ground. So like,
Right.
I don't want to go anywhere that, even in February of last year, we went up to Milwaukee, and there was like a blizzard. It was insane. So we talked about that on the podcast with Bad Planning. And
Yeah.
actually, funny enough, people turned out to that show. Like there ended up being like 50 people at that show,
Oh,
um,
really? Yeah.
which it would have been a lot better if it wouldn't have snowed. But again, like I don't like doing stuff in the winter or the summer unless it's going to be like nicer weather, because here that would really, if there's a blizzard, nobody's going to show up to the show. Like it's just, that's just how it's going to be. So uh progress on the tour is going good. We have holds at all the venues, whether it's first or second hold right now. So I finally got in touch with somebody in Jacksonville, and I think we're going to do pretty well. So I'm really big on like working with bands like Tired Radio and You Vandal and Bad Planning and Stay the Course. Bands that are like U Vandal had they were, when I approached them about it, they were like, yeah, well, we haven't done like a home state run for a little while, so we're definitely down. And I had actually booked them in St. Louis last year, and the show was really good. We had almost 100 people there. So I like it's kind of one of those things where I want to work with bands that are a little bit more well known than us,
Yeah,
in
sure.
their hometown. So then if U Vandal wants to come to St. Louis and do a St. Louis, Kansas City, Omaha run, like we could make that happen and have it be just as good for them,
Sure.
here as it will be for us. So kind of helping bands out like that like, hey, I'll return the favor, even whenever the time comes. But
Yeah.
I'm trying to work with bands that like our Bad Planning tour was ideal because we played in Milwaukee and Bad Planning had played in Milwaukee, but we hadn't. And they're from Chicago. We played in Chicago once before, and we both had played Indianapolis before, and they had never played St. Louis before, and we're from here. So we knew that two of the shows, Chicago and St. Louis, were going to go off. So, and then if we had a couple shows like that weren't so great, the Milwaukee show ended up being okay. The Indiana show was, there were maybe like 30 people there, which wasn't super great, but it was still good enough. Like, we were still happy with it. So,
Yeah.
like, if you can kind of figure it out that way, and another band that we're looking to kind of link up with on that tour is Dial Drive from Orlando.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Love those guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be amazing. Yeah, for sure.
So we might try to do one or two shows with them too. So kind of trying to be strategic about it and think about, and I have booked Dial Drive up here in St. Louis before. So you're kind of trying to be strategic about it and network and make connections with the people that can help you is key.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So in that vein, you're helping out a lot of bands. You're helping, all these bands and you're touring with all these bands in the St. Louis and Chicago and meeting all these bands. But when you look at, your future in music, is there a band, should I say, is there a band that you've always wanted to tour with? Like, what's your dream band that you would love to be associated with? Like in a big name band or a band that you looked up to, or a band that you aspire to, eventually open for or actually share the stage with?
Yeah. I mean, MXPX has always been like at the top of the list.
Sure.
MXPX, Bayside, Face to Face, the Menzingers, like the Flatliners. That's all kind of like my hot water music. Like that kind of like org core, like sound, like the Fest kind of sound are a lot of my Iron Chic, are a lot of my favorite bands. I mean, MXPX was the band that got me into punk rock. So to be able, like I mentioned before, like, I'm friends with Mike, so that would be really cool, but we never played with them before. So that would be really cool. But we've done stuff together where it's, he's been on, I've been on his podcast. He's come up here and done a speaking gig. And, he was on our podcast several times when we were doing Strange House. But we've never played together. So, and they have a new album coming out soon, in August. So they'll definitely be touring. I don't know if they'll come through St. Louis or not, but I would love to even do like 5 days, 3 to 5 days with them would just be like incredible, because now they're at the point where, they're a legacy act. They've been around for almost 30 years. Like, people are bringing their kids to their shows now. So that would be really awesome. Face to Face, Bayside would also be another really cool one. I mean, of course, like really, really big bands like Blink-182 or Green Day or The Offspring would be awesome as well.
Sure.
But those are some really, really cool bands that I would love to tour with. The Flatliners are another one. There's like some smaller bands that there's a band from Atlanta called New Junk City. And I really like them, and I've emailed them a little bit about doing like a weekender. And there's a band from Pittsburgh called Night Marathons that is really good too. So I'd love to link up with the guys from American Thrills.
Okay.
Yeah, but they're way up in like Connecticut, So
are they? Yeah.
it would have to be the kind of thing like we're doing with Florida, where we'd fly out and share their gear and everything, and do a few days and then head home. So, but yeah, I mean, all of those bands, it would be like humbling to be on any of those tours. And all it
yeah.
takes, like, we got to open for Wilhelm Scream last year. We got to play with Much the Same last year. We opened for Fear, which is like a legendary punk rock
Sure.
band, like
Yeah, yeah.
1958. And they're not going to be touring anymore. They're pretty much done after this year. So, we've gotten some big opportunities. Belvedere is another one. Like, I would have loved to have hopped on with them for, a couple more dates on their tour that they're doing when they come through. So maybe next time they come through, we'll do it. But,
Yeah.
yeah.
No, I mean that's awesome. I mean, you're talking about MXPX, and I've got a funny little story about them. When I was in the Navy, and I would buy the comp CDs, and I would find out all these different bands. But my goal back then, I would write out handwritten letters when I was in the Navy
Oh, that's cool.
to all these bands, because they would always put their address there, and I would write 20,000 bands, and all I wanted was a sticker. I said, hey, I really enjoy your music and all that kind of stuff. That's when I started really kind of discovering bands. I had the Revelation Records like mail order fanzine thing kind of a deal. It was like paperback, and like there's 20,000 different bands, but I would always write like 20 bands like a month. Just, hey, I just wanted a free sticker, and 9 times out of 10 bands would send me stuff. This one time I wrote MXPX, and Mike sent me a MXPX sweatshirt, like sticker, a handwritten letter to me, and I still got to find it. It's in a box in my attic right now, but I'll never forget it. And I wore it like ad nauseum, and he sent me a whole bunch of stuff, and I thought that was like the really coolest thing. So hopefully we can get him on my podcast to be able to see if he remembers sending that to me, because all I wanted was a sticker, and he sent me a hoodie. It was just so
Dude.
awesome.
Yeah, that is amazing. I think that speaks a lot to like just their character as a band, and
Yeah.
how they connected with their fans and everything like that. I mean, you took the time to write a letter, like, and you're talking about it to this day, so
Yeah, yeah, right. I remember to that. Diesel Boy wrote me back. Diesel Dave wrote me back. A whole bunch of other like bands that that aren't around anymore. But like, I made really good friends with the guy from Longfellow, but now they're called Sedera. I don't know if you remember Longfellow back in the day. But when I got out of the Navy and I became pen pals with a guy, he sent me. They have an album called "We're Huge in Japan." And it was a poster. He sent it to me, and the whole band signed the poster and all that kind of stuff. And I was like, this is amazing. So that's, just really cool stories of just writing bands, and how bands are really cool and receptive, and developing those relationships, even, in your 20s, so it was pretty awesome.
oh, absolutely, that's really cool.
Yeah. So, all right. So let's talk about, we're going to talk about some of these music videos real quick. We helped you with when Summer Never Ends. I love that video. What do you remember from making that video?
Oh, dude, it was so fun. That was actually like our guitarist Steven had just been, I think he'd maybe only been on one tour with us at that point too. So now he's been in the band for a year, and so that was really cool. Dude, I wanted to just kind of create this feeling of almost kind of like a house show type vibe, where it was in the summer. It was honestly right around this time last year that we recorded that video, and that song just kind of comes right out of the box, like, heavy hitting, and I just kind of wanted like, and honestly, man, that's when we play shows at the Sinkhole or Platypus, that's kind of very similar to how our shows is now the songs have been out for a while, and people are like, I get in people's faces and hand them the mic, and they sing along, and people just kind of go wild. So, we kind of just wanted to make it this cool video of us playing live and having a good time. And I rounded up a bunch of everybody in that video is friends of ours, or they're in a band that's based out of St. Louis, and or they're friends of ours, and we really just kind of wanted to make it like a fun show. And there was a lot of in the video, like Steven's drinking a beer, I'm drinking a beer at one point in the middle, where like it was kind of this juxtaposition of like we were playing, but then it kind of made us look at like we were fans of the band too. And that was the first
Yeah.
time that Jacob ever shotgunned a beer too.
Oh, was it? Yeah.
Yeah. So,
It's awesome.
and Hez, our drummer, he doesn't drink. So like when he's sitting up there on like the top of this like high up thing with, you can't tell, but it's like a LaCroix or it was like a beer that wasn't opened, and he's like eating pizza. So yeah, we kind of wanted it to just
Yeah.
be this kind of wild, type of video that where everybody was just having a good time and rocking out to our shows. And I don't know if that video the chicken before the egg thing, like if we made that video and then everybody kind of started going buck at our shows, or if it was people were already ready to do that or not. But yeah, super super fun video. That's probably the most fun I've had making one.
Yeah, I mean, it looked like it. I mean, I just love, the crowd and you getting into it, and I could just imagine, when you come to Orlando, I'm going to be right there. Just hand me the microphone. I'll scream. I'll scream
Oh hell yeah,
all
dude.
day. I'll be right there, dude.
Take the easy road. Do you ever wanna take the easy road? Do you ever take the easy way out? Or would you hope for something more?
The other song I wanted to touch base on, it was the first video that you and I kind of worked on. It's probably the first one that you did when you first started coming back. What's Left of Me was like the first video, right?
Yeah.
I think so. What do you remember about that? It's one of those songs where I always think about it all the time. Every time I see something that you post or whatever, I always think about that video and all that kind of stuff. And what do you remember from making that video and that song?
Sure. That was pretty early on in COVID still. Like that was early 2021, February of 2021. And we rented out that venue. It's off Broadway here in St. Louis, which is a super nice, like 300, 400 cap venue. And we've actually played there several times now. We've had any big shows. We had like an EP release show there, and we had I called it Punksgiving. We had like a Punksgiving show there, and we've had like close to 200 people there. So we're getting close to filling it up now. Every time we played there, we've had over 100 people. But we played there, and it was in the middle of COVID when you couldn't have a lot of people around. You know what I mean? And so it was just us in the venue, and then like my girlfriend came and like took some photos and stuff, and it was just us and the video crew pretty much. And I really wanted it to be kind of like an old school MTV style video. You know what I mean? That you would maybe not even like pre TRL area, like era. I wanted it to more be of like just if late at night, if you were watching MTV, like that would maybe come on and you'd be like, oh shit, this is a cool song. Like this is awesome, So,
No, I got that from it.
Oh, thank you, man. Thank you. I wanted to kind of capture like a little bit of our live, at that point we hadn't played we hadn't played a show since before COVID either. And we hadn't even played a show with Johnny, our guitarist yet. So, it was definitely new for us. And that was really at the time, like I've always been like, an energetic performer. I've always jumped around and tried to get people involved, but I really wanted to capture that with us, like, the different, especially certain points in that song where we just go off. We usually play that pretty late in our set, if not last. And in the middle, the breakdown, the instrumental breakdown, like we really just go off during that. So I wanted to kind of capture that, the essence of our live show a little bit too.
Let's talk about the album, the next single.
Yeah.
What can we expect? When is the new a newer song coming from? And do you have a date for the new album yet to be released?
I do not have a date yet. It is. I just talked to our label, Jumpstart. I guess it was Wednesday night, and he said that they are ready to cut. They're ready to. I don't know how all this works, but like they're ready to like cut the lacquer for it. So
Okay. All right.
so we're in the early stages of getting it pressed and everything. The artwork is done. I'll actually I'll send you the artwork. I'll send you a text or something so you can take.
Okay.
Don't post it on socials yet, but
Oh, it's going everywhere, dude. I'm just kidding.
but I'll send you the artwork.
Okay.
We don't have a date yet. I really wanted to get it out by the end of the year, but I don't think that's going to happen. I think it's probably going to be early next year, maybe like, because again, like I don't like doing anything like once it gets too close to Thanksgiving, people just are too distracted with family stuff, with the holidays. Like, so we'll definitely wait at the earliest, even if it's ready, by the end of this year. I would say, I would wait until late January at the earliest, like maybe even February to release it. So,
Okay.
but we'll do pre-orders through Jumpstart and everything, and so you'll definitely, we'll have a huge campaign leading up to it on when it's going to be released and announcing when it's going to be released, and we'll release singles from it, and we're going to at least do 2 more singles and 1 more with a video. So I have I don't think I haven't sent you the new album yet, have I? Like the masters to it?
No.
Okay. I'm going to send it to you later today.
Oh, do it. Yeah.
So
I love it.
you can listen to it. You can get a little preview of it before it's out. But we have a song called, the 2 singles that I want to do. We have a song called Thunder that also has a guest vocalist. So our drummer his wife, her nickname is Clue because that's her initials, CLU.
Oh, nice.
She's a phenomenal vocalist, and she sang on 3 of the songs on the album. A couple of them are kind of just like background vocals, you know what I mean? On one of them, she does a really cool counter melody though, and that sounds like that's kind of almost more of like a feature. And then on this song called Thunder, she sings kind of like through the bridge with me. It's not quite a duet, but it's like it's background vocals, and it's definitely like sounds awesome. So I want to release that as a single without a video, and then but once we'll start releasing singles once we have like a release date and everything. So I would really like to release them like now, just because I like putting stuff out and hearing what people have, like seeing people respond to it. But our label is kind of like, let's wait until we have a release date, and then it can kind of be more strategic and more coordinated, and that makes a lot of sense to me. So then we have another song called Paper Hearts that we have been playing live over the last couple of months. So I'm really big on, like, I only like to play songs that are released like live, because there's nothing to me like when I go see a band and they play a bunch of songs that aren't on Spotify or on a record that's out. Nobody knows them. So nobody knows those songs. So you're kind of like, oh, cool, yeah. And then I've literally seen this at shows, like where they're like, okay, we're gonna play a few new ones, and it's like, okay, they play 3 or 4 new songs out of a 10-song set, and you're kind of like, you can see the difference. Even like when I go see a band like Saves the Day, they throw a new song in there, and everyone's kind of listening and taking it in because it's the first time they've heard it, and then they go back to a song off of Stay What You Are, Through Being Cool, and everybody like starts going crazy again. So you kind of have to be careful. I feel like it's smart to be careful about that. So we have one new song that we have been playing. It's called Paper Hearts. It's off the new album, and the response to that has been very, very good. So we went on tour with Stay the Course, and we played it on a couple of dates with them, and they the guys were like, wow, that is a really good song. So so I'm really happy about that, and excited to see like how people respond to that. But we'll definitely do a video for that one as well. So
dude, I'm looking forward to it. I got your back, dude. I got your back.
I know you do. I know you do. I appreciate it, man.
Hell yeah. Well, dude, thank you so much for joining the podcast, man. I really appreciate it. Where can people find you online and on all the socials and get some merch and find out where you're going to be and what you're going to be doing and keep in touch
Yeah.
with you?
So mainly I post the most on Instagram. So it's at Wesley Hoffman on Instagram. I would really like for it to be just at Wes Hoffman, but somebody else, there's another Wes Hoffman out there, and they
Oh,
got
is there?
that like right off the bat. And they don't even post anymore. So I'm almost kind of
Like, hey,
I
buddy.
have thought about like, reaching out to that person and be like, hey, can I have your username? You're not using it.
Right.
Um,
You haven't posted since September of 2018. Let me have it already.
yeah, yeah. Take your account down and then I can take that name. But
Yeah.
uh, so yeah, it's at Wesley Hoffman. The podcast has its own Instagram account now. It's FWIW with Wes. So for what it's worth with Wes, and that's still growing, and I'll be sharing stuff from there on Wes Hoffman's page. So like kind of back and forth. Um, it's Wes Hoffman on all streaming platforms. I've tried to change it to Wes Hoffman and Friends, but you basically have to start an all new Spotify account to do that. And I don't want, I don't want to lose all our streams that we have. So,
Yeah,
so
I didn't know that was that big of a pain in the ass to change a name on Spotify, right?
it is like
Is
you
it?
have to, through my, like I use DistroKid, and it's kind of like, you basically would have to start from the beginning, or contact Spotify and say, hey, can you change the name? And I think it's a whole big process. So it's just at Wes Hoffman. And I also thought about that too, like, even though, we go by Wes Hoffman and Friends. And the reason for that was I always knew that I know that I'm going to be putting out music as long as I possibly can. So, I knew that instead of, if we chose a name like, the the Duck Bills or something like that. Like, I don't know, there's a duck on the screen right now for the StreamYard mascot.
Yeah.
If we
Yeah.
chose a name like that, and I think a lot of people didn't understand why I made the decision to use my name like first. Like, if we used a name like that, you know, all the people that I've met, that I've mentioned, that I've podcasted with, like, they know my name. All of those bands that I mentioned, people like Mike Herrera and JT from Hawthorne Heights, and different people like that. If they saw it, they would be like, "Oh, it's Wes's band. I should check that out." If they
Sure.
saw the Duck Bills, they might not know that I'm a part of it, and they might not take the time to check it out. So
Yeah, that's smart. Yeah, for sure.
yeah. So I talked about that on Mike's podcast, and he was like, "Oh, well, that made sense." He was like, "You're using your name, like, of course, people know who you are, like, that would make sense." And also on all of the recordings that we've released, the new album and the EP, like, I wrote and recorded everything on there but drums. So all the lead guitars, all the background vocals, all the bass, it was all me, and I wanted to do that on the first EP at least, and then I ended up doing it on the album. And now we've had other people jump in and play keyboards, and we've had people do gang vocals, and people like Clue who have added their voice to it as well. But we're just now starting to get to the point where Steven, our guitarist, is adding in some of his own stuff. So I'll write a whole song and I'll leave out different leads, and just last weekend he came into the studio and put some guitar parts to some stuff. So we're just starting to kind of collaborate in that way a little bit. There's still some songs that I'm like, okay, I want to do it all on this one, but I also knew that I also felt like, well, if people come and go, like, then that gives me the opportunity to, like, the band doesn't have to be strictly these 3 or 4 people all the time.
Sure.
It'll always be me, but, like, we've had 3 different drummers go on tour with us. We've had 2 different guitar players, and Johnny, our guitar player, like, him and his girlfriend are getting ready to have a baby, so he's kind of taking a step back and not going to play for a little while, and then when he's ready, he can come back in and that type of thing. So, and we have another guy that's going to go on, play a couple hometown shows with us, and maybe play a couple out of town shows, like on second guitar, because we've kind of morphed into, now we can play as a 5-piece sometimes, and I don't have to play guitar all the time. I can kind of just get the crowd involved.
Take a night off.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, so that's really cool. It's been great to have different people kind of come in and out of the band and be a part of it. So,
yeah, I love it, because it's always tricky every time every time I help you with the music video. I'm like, you got to send me an updated band photo, because you have like people, and I'm like, I don't want to post the wrong thing and all that kind of stuff, but it all makes sense. I mean, yeah, people our age, we all have families now, and we're starting to have kids and things that are happening, and you can't just pick up and do a tour, or do a show here and there, and you got to find somebody, and it sounds awesome that you have a slew of people to step in and do and take care of business. You know what I mean?
oh, dude, it's and it's honestly like, in two things to say about that. No one has ever had any, like, our drummer has, he just, with work and different things and family, like, there's been a few tours that he just hasn't been able to go on. And, I was really upfront with the guys about that at first. And it's been really cool because nobody has never been like, oh, has gotten upset about that either. It's always been clear expectations that, like, if there's something that we want to do, if we want to go on a tour, or if we want to go all the way to Canada and play and you can't do, or even if you just say like, hey, I don't want to do this one, like, I need to sit this one out. I'll never be mad about that. It'll be then my responsibility to find somebody, if I want to do it. And, everybody's been okay with that. It's been a really, really, like, chill experience. We've never had any drama around that. But on the flip side of that, it's also been really cool to have other people kind of jump into the band. Steven, our guitarist, he and I were in a band for briefly for like a year or two. And so he kind of jumped in and when Johnny wasn't able to go on one, and now Steven's like a member of the band, and Johnny has kind of left, and for a little while, or we played a few shows with Johnny this year, but and he'll come back when the time is right. But we've also gotten to have different drummers. So were you a big Tooth and Nail fan back in the day? Tooth and Nail Records?
Yes, I was. Who was Blindside was on Tooth and Nail?
Yeah, they were on Solid State, which was like a part of Tooth and Nail.
Yeah.
Like Imprint, and but the MXPX, of course. Slick
MXPX
Dude.
was on. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
There was a band called Sidewalk Slam, and then there was another band called Run Kid Run. Are those ringing a bell at all?
No, when I was doing research, I know that you're playing some shows with them, and it didn't sound familiar. But I don't remember. Tooth and Nail was kind of a weird label to me. Like I liked I knew MXPX was on there, but yeah, no, it didn't sound familiar. But they were on the label around that time.
Yeah. So Sidewalk Slam is from like Southern Illinois. Like their guys are from here. And their drummer, Matt, he plays drums with us sometimes. So he was in Run Kid Run awesome. As well. And they toured with MXPX briefly. They toured with like Goaty Hook and the Dingies, and some of these are like Christian punk bands. But they recorded with like Matt from Reliant K, and they did a couple songs with like Bill Stevenson and Stephen Edgerton from The Descendants, and they did a co-writing session with Aaron Gillespie from Under Oath and all that. So so he has really cool stories. Like whenever he's a couple years older than me, but he has become a good friend. And back when they were Sidewalk Slam, my old band played shows with them all the time, and so it was really cool to kind of like, he and I have we would run into each other throughout the years, but we never really played together. And then when we needed somebody to play drums, I was like, hey, do you think you want to play? And so now he and I have, like, I would say he's one of my best friends, because
that's awesome.
We've done 3 tours together, and we went all the way out to Denver and played a show, and so it's really cool. And our other drummer Travis, he's done a couple tours with us. He went to Canada with us. Shout out Travi Canada. But
What's up?
yeah, it's been really cool because we've been able to bring other people in and like really develop some awesome friendships with those guys. So it's awesome.
It works, man, and I love it. I'm looking forward to everything that you're doing in the next, within the next year, and I'm looking forward to that Orlando stuff, the Orlando dates. Keep me posted. Even if you don't do Orlando, you do Jacksonville. I'll drive up to Jacksonville. It's only 2 hours away. I drove 2 hours to see Mario from Nights Like These up in Ocala because I was like, dude, if you're only 2 hours away, I'll drive, man. I'll make it a day. So. Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing you and looking forward to hearing the new album.
Absolutely, man. Well, we're planning on doing Jacksonville, Gainesville, Orlando, and Tampa. So.
Oh, all right. Yeah, so I can pick and choose, or I can try to do them all. But
Yeah,
I don't know if the wife is going to let me go to all those shows because I'm sure they're going to be around the same date. I'm going to have to take a month off.
Well, a couple of them are going to be. We have a friend down there, and they said they're going to come to at least the Orlando and Tampa one. So, and that'll be like Saturday and Sunday. So, if it all works out right, so.
Oh hell yeah! Even better, man. Even better. It's not on a school night. Wes Hoffman, thank you so much for joining Signal Chords, home of the Underground podcast, man. I really appreciate it. Keep us posted on everything that you're doing. Love what you're doing. Thank you so much, man, for everything. Appreciate it.
And thank you, brother. I really appreciate it.